I'm Elmer, 35 years old and a single dad to my 6-year-old daughter Emma. My wealthy parents never approved of my life choices, and we've been estranged for years. But this Christmas, I reluctantly accepted their invitation after minimal contact. The tension between my family and my sister Natalie's perfect one was always there, but I never expected what would happen when my daughter excitedly met her grandparents for the first time in years. Before I continue this painful memory, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt like the black sheep in your own family. Growing up in my parents' sprawling New England mansion should have been idyllic, but it was anything but. My father Richard made his fortune in real estate development, and my mother Eleanor came from old money. Their world revolved around appearances, social standing, and financial success. Love was conditional, always tied to achievement and conformity. From an early age, I never quite fit their mold. While my sister Natalie excelled at everything she touched, perfect grades, musical prodigy, socially adept, I was more introspective and creative. My parents viewed these traits not as different strengths, but as fundamental weaknesses. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. When I brought home a B+ in advanced math, my father would point out that Natalie never got anything below an A. When I won second place in a writing competition, my mother wondered aloud why I couldn't have won first. By high school, I'd stopped trying to earn their approval. I grew my hair long, started playing guitar in a local band, and applied to state colleges for education, instead of the Ivy League business schools they had planned for me. Each choice widened the gulf between us. Then I met Rebecca during my sophomore year of college. She was free-spirited, artistic, and completely unconcerned with status or wealth. My parents disapproved immediately. When we announced our engagement after graduation, my father threatened to cut me off financially. I told him I'd already been emotionally cut off for years, so it wouldn't make much difference. We married anyway. I became a high school English teacher, and Rebecca worked as a graphic designer. We lived in a modest apartment, happy with our choices despite my parents' continued disapproval. When Emma was born 4 years later, I hoped her arrival might bridge the divide between us. My parents sent an impersonal card and a small savings bond, but declined to visit their only grandchild. 2 years after Emma was born, Rebecca confessed she felt trapped. She hadn't signed up for the conventional life of parenthood, she said. She wanted to travel, pursue her art without constraints. One morning I woke to find her gone, a note on the kitchen table explaining she needed to find herself and wouldn't be coming back. Just like that, I became a single father. No child support, no co-parenting, just me and Emma against the world. I called my parents once during those dark days, hoping for some support or comfort. My mother suggested I should have chosen a more stable partner and offered to recommend a nanny service. I hung up and didn't call again. For 4 years, Emma and I built our life together. I arranged my teaching schedule around her preschool, then kindergarten hours. We had movie nights with homemade popcorn, weekend trips to local parks, and bedtime stories every night. We didn't have much money, but we had each other. Then came the layoffs. Budget cuts hit our school district hard, and as one of the newer teachers, I was among the first let go. This happened just 6 weeks before Christmas, leaving me scrambling for substitute teaching positions and evening tutoring jobs while applying for full-time positions that wouldn't start until the next semester. It was during this financial strain that my mother called out of the blue. "We're having Christmas at the house this year," she said, as if we'd been in regular contact. "Natalie and Bradley are bringing the children. We thought it might be nice if you and Emma joined us." The pause before my daughter's name told me everything I needed to know about where we stood. Still, I considered it. Emma had been asking about her grandparents more frequently, curious about the family she barely knew. And truthfully, the prospect of giving her a proper Christmas with presents under a tree seemed increasingly out of reach on my dwindling savings. "We'll be there," I said finally, ignoring the voice in my head warning me this was a mistake. Emma was ecstatic at the news. She spent the next 2 weeks creating a wish list for Santa, drawing pictures for her grandparents, and asking endless questions about her cousins, Jackson, Tyler, and Madison, whom she had met only once as a toddler. The morning of our drive to Connecticut, Emma clutched her carefully folded wish list and a handmade card for her grandparents. "Do you think Grandma and Grandpa will like me, Daddy?" she asked, her big brown eyes serious beneath her knit hat. "They'll love you, sweetheart," I lied, hating myself for the deception but wanting to preserve her excitement. The 5-hour drive felt like moving backward in time. With each mile closer to my childhood home, I could feel myself shrinking, becoming the disappointing son again rather than the confident father and teacher I'd worked to become. We pulled up to the gated driveway at 3 in the afternoon on December 23rd. The mansion was decorated with professional-grade Christmas lights, enormous wreaths on every window, and a towering spruce visible through the front windows. Emma gasped at the sight. "It's like a castle from my books," she exclaimed. The front door opened before we could ring the bell. My mother stood there, elegant as always in a cashmere sweater and pearls, her silver hair perfectly styled. "You're late," she said by way of greeting. "We expected you an hour ago." Traffic was heavy, I explained, though we'd never actually discussed an arrival time. Eleanor's gaze fell to Emma, who was half hiding behind my leg. "And this is the child," she said, as if Emma were a specimen to be examined. "This is your granddaughter, Emma," I corrected gently. "Emma, this is your grandmother." Emma, always braver than me, stepped forward and held out her handmade card. "I made this for you and Grandpa," she said proudly. My mother took the card with 2 fingers, as if it might be contaminated. How crafty. "Well, come in before you let all the heat out." And just like that, I knew exactly how the next 2 days would unfold. The interior of my parents' home was exactly as I remembered, opulent, immaculate, and utterly unwelcoming. The marble foyer opened to a great room, where a 14-foot Christmas tree sparkled with coordinated ornaments and ribbon, nothing homemade or sentimental to be seen. My father emerged from his study, looking distinguished with his full head of white hair and tailored clothes. He gave me a perfunctory handshake. "Still driving that economy car, I see," he noted, having glanced out the window at my modest sedan. "Not very practical for New England winters." "It gets us where we need to go," I replied, then introduced Emma, who offered another of her handmade cards. Richard accepted it with slightly more grace than my mother had, though he immediately set it aside on an entry table without opening it. "Your sister's family will be arriving shortly. They're coming from the airport. They've just returned from a week in Aspen." Of course they had. My sister Natalie had followed our parents' prescribed path perfectly. Ivy League education, marriage to Bradley, a successful investment banker she met at a debutante ball, 3 perfectly spaced children, and a career as a part-time gallery curator that was just demanding enough to be impressive but flexible enough for her to attend every school function and charity luncheon. A housekeeper I didn't recognize showed us to our rooms, connected spaces in the west wing of the house, far from the main family bedrooms. Emma's excitement couldn't be dimmed by the cool reception. She bounced on the queen-size bed and explored the attached bathroom with its marble countertops and plush towels. "This is the fanciest hotel ever, Daddy," she exclaimed. "It's not a hotel, sweetheart. This is where I grew up," I explained, watching her eyes widen. "You lived here? Like, every day?" I nodded, unpacking our modest luggage into the cherry wood dresser. "Then why do we live in an apartment?" she asked innocently. Before I could formulate an answer, the distant sound of the doorbell followed by excited voices signaled my sister's arrival. Emma ran to the door. "Can we go meet my cousins now?" Downstairs, the scene was exactly as I'd expected. Natalie, still model beautiful at 38, was being embraced warmly by our mother, while her husband Bradley received a hearty handshake and backslap from our father. Their 3 children, Jackson, 12, Tyler, 10, and Madison, 8, were already being fawned over by their grandparents. "Look how tall you've gotten, Jackson. And Madison, that ski outfit is adorable on you," my mother cooed. When we entered the room, there was an almost imperceptible shift in atmosphere. Natalie spotted us first, her perfect smile faltering for just a moment before she composed herself. "Elmer!" "It's been ages," she said, air-kissing near my cheek. She glanced down at Emma. "And this must be Emma. My, she's gotten so big." Emma stepped forward eagerly. "Hi, Aunt Natalie. I'm 6 now. Are those my cousins?" The 3 children looked over at Emma, with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely disguised disdain. Madison, the youngest, took in Emma's department store coat and light-up sneakers with a wrinkled nose. "Your shoes light up? That's for babies," she declared. "Madison," Bradley said without much conviction. "Be nice." He turned to me with a practiced smile. "Elmer, good to see you. Heard about your job situation. Tough break." And there it was. Somehow they all knew about my layoff, and it had clearly been discussed before our arrival. I felt Emma's small hand slip into mine as she sensed the tension. "We're managing fine," I said evenly. "Well, if you need advice on personal finance during career transitions, I'm happy to share some insights," Bradley offered with the condescending tone of someone who has never worried about making rent. Dinner that evening was an exercise in subtle humiliation. The meal itself was spectacular. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, and Yorkshire pudding served on the family's formal china. But the conversation consistently highlighted the stark differences between my life choices and my sister's. "Bradley's firm just opened a new office in Singapore," my father announced proudly. "They've asked him to consider heading it up." "We're still discussing it," Natalie added. "The schools there are excellent, but we'd hate to take the children away from their competitive swim team. They're both ranked in the state." "And what school does your daughter attend, Elmer?" my mother asked, though I was certain she didn't care. "Parkview Elementary. It's a great public school with wonderful teachers," I said, giving Emma an encouraging smile. "Public?" Madison Stage whispered to Tyler, who snickered. Throughout the meal, Emma tried valiantly to connect with her cousins, sharing stories about her class pet hamster and her best friend's birthday party at the bowling alley. Each anecdote was met with barely concealed eye rolls from the older children. "We had our birthday parties at the Plaza Hotel," Madison informed her, "with professional entertainers. After dinner, the adults moved to the living room for drinks, while the children were sent to the family room to watch a movie." I could hear the cousins squabbling over what to watch, with Emma's suggestions being immediately vetoed. From my position on the periphery of the adult conversation, I overheard my mother and father talking quietly. "Did you have to seat her next to Madison? The child's table manners are atrocious," my mother murmured. "It's only for 2 days, Eleanor," my father replied. "We're maintaining appearances for the family's sake. You know how people talk when families are estranged during the holidays." I stepped outside onto the terrace, needing air and distance. The cold December night helped clear my head as I questioned for the 100th time why I had subjected Emma to this environment. A text message lit up my phone, a former colleague wishing us happy holidays and checking if I'd heard back about a job application. Real connection from someone who actually cared about our welfare. It provided a moment of perspective before I had to go back inside and face another round of subtle digs and comparisons. Christmas Eve morning arrived with a fresh dusting of snow that transformed the manicured grounds into something from a holiday card. Emma woke early and pressed her face against our bedroom window. "Daddy, can we build a snowman, please?" It was a perfect opportunity to escape the house for a while. "Great idea, sweetie. Let's have breakfast first, then we'll go out." In the kitchen, I found the housekeeper preparing a lavish breakfast spread. I offered to help, but she politely declined, clearly having been instructed not to allow me near the cooking. Instead, Emma and I sat at the breakfast nook while the rest of the family trickled in at their leisure. Natalie's children appeared in coordinating Christmas pajamas, immediately commanding my parents' attention. "Did you sleep well, darlings?" Eleanor asked them, serving them Belgian waffles herself, rather than allowing the housekeeper to do it. When Emma asked for the same, my mother replied, "The waffles are almost gone. There's cereal in the pantry if you're still hungry after your eggs." After breakfast, Emma and I escaped outdoors. The simple joy of building a snowman together was exactly what we both needed. Laughing, throwing soft snowballs, and creating a respectable snow figure complete with sticks for arms and rocks for buttons. We were putting the finishing touches on our creation when Madison, Tyler, and Jackson emerged from the house in designer snow gear. "That's not how you build a proper snowman," Jackson declared, immediately taking over and rearranging our work. "The proportions are all wrong." Tyler pushed past Emma to add his own improvements, while Madison stood back and directed like a tiny supervisor. Within minutes, our collaborative project had been completely taken over, with Emma relegated to fetching more sticks and rocks at her cousin's commands. Back inside, holiday preparations were in full swing. Eleanor was directing the housekeeper and a hired assistant in arranging elaborate platters of hors d'oeuvres for the evening's gathering. Apparently, several family friends would be joining us for Christmas Eve dinner. "Mom, can Emma and I help with anything?" I offered. "I suppose she could arrange the napkins," my mother said reluctantly. "Just make sure her hands are clean first." Emma took the task seriously, carefully folding each linen napkin according to my mother's instructions. When she finished the first one, she held it up proudly. "Is this right, Grandma?" Eleanor barely glanced at it. "The fold is crooked. Do it again." By the third attempt, Emma's enthusiasm had dimmed considerably. I stepped in, showing her how to make simple folds that would meet Eleanor's exacting standards, whispering encouragement as we worked together. Meanwhile, Natalie was being praised for the homemade cookies she'd supervised the children in making, which clearly had been professionally decorated despite my sister's claims that the children did it all themselves. Later that afternoon, Bradley cornered me in the library where I'd retreated with a book. "So, job hunting in this economy. Must be rough," he began, swirling an expensive scotch. "Have you considered corporate training? Someone with your limited experience might find it a good stepping stone." I forced a neutral expression. "I'm actually interviewing for a curriculum development position after the holidays." "Curriculum development? Is there any money in that? Because at your age, with a child to support, retirement planning should be a serious consideration." He launched into an unsolicited lecture about investment strategies, clearly enjoying the opportunity to highlight my financial inferiority. I excused myself when I heard Emma's voice in the hallway, finding her in tears outside the game room. "What happened, sweetheart?" I asked, kneeling to her level. "Tyler said, Grandma and Grandpa don't really like us," she sniffled. "He said they only invited us because they felt sorry for us because you lost your job and were poor." My heart broke for her. "That's not true, Emma. And we're not poor, we have everything we need." "Then why does Madison have 3 American Girl dolls and I don't have any? And why does Grandma always talk to her but not to me?" I considered packing our bags right then. "Do you want to go home, Em? We can leave right now if you want." Her eyes widened in alarm. "But tomorrow is Christmas. Santa knows I'm here, and what about presents?" Despite the hurt, the magic of Christmas still held sway. "Please, can we stay? Just until tomorrow?" I couldn't take Christmas morning away from her. "Okay. We'll stay for Christmas." The evening's dinner party was another exercise in exclusion. Family friends cooed over Natalie's children and their many accomplishments, while Emma sat quietly at the far end of the children's table. During the gift exchange among the adults, Natalie received a diamond tennis bracelet from our parents, while I was handed a generic gift card to a department store. After the guests departed, my parents gathered everyone for the annual Christmas Eve photo in front of the tree. The photographer, yes, they hired a professional, arranged us with my parents centered, Natalie and her family prominently placed beside them, while Emma and I were positioned at the far edge, almost as an afterthought. "Could you move them in a bit more? They're barely in the frame," the photographer suggested. "It's fine as is," my father replied dismissively. "Just take the picture." While the others were distracted with more photos, I pulled my mother aside in the hallway. "Mom, I need to talk to you about how you're treating Emma. She's just a child and she can feel when she's being excluded." Eleanor's face hardened. "I'm not excluding anyone. But you can hardly expect us to treat her the same as Natalie's children. They're being raised properly, with advantages and manners. Your daughter is, well, she reflects your choices, Elmer." "My choices? To love and raise my child after her mother abandoned us? To work in education rather than chasing wealth? Those choices? Don't be dramatic," she sighed. "This is exactly why you've always been difficult. Everything is a personal affront with you." She walked away, leaving me seething but determined not to create a scene that would further upset Emma. That night, as I tucked Emma into the guest bed, she asked the question I'd been dreading. "Daddy, why don't Grandma and Grandpa like me?" I sat on the edge of her bed, choosing my words carefully. "Sweetie, sometimes adults have complicated feelings that have nothing to do with the children in their lives. Your grandparents have certain ideas about how people should live, and sometimes that makes it hard for them to show love the way other grandparents do. Is it because I'm not as good as Madison and Tyler and Jackson?" "No, absolutely not," I said firmly. "You are amazing just as you are. You're kind and creative and brave. Those are the things that really matter." She seemed to consider this. "Will Santa still come here even though it's not our house?" "Of course he will," I assured her, silently wondering what modest gifts I'd managed to fit in our luggage would look like beside whatever extravagant presents awaited her cousins. "I hope he brings something nice for everyone, even Grandma and Grandpa," Emma said sleepily. "Maybe if they get good presents, they'll be happier tomorrow." Her pure-hearted concern for the very people who had been cold to her made my throat tight with emotion. That's a wonderful thought, Em. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow will be better. As she drifted off, I made a silent promise that whatever happened in the morning, I would protect her from further hurt, even if it meant leaving immediately after the gift exchange. Christmas morning arrived with Emma bouncing on my bed at 6:30, her eyes bright with excitement despite everything that had happened. "Daddy, wake up! It's Christmas! Do you think Santa came?" I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "I'm sure he did. Let's get dressed and go see." The household rules dictated that no one could go downstairs until everyone was assembled, so we waited nearly an hour for the others to appear. Natalie's children eventually emerged in new Christmas pajamas, followed by the adults, all perfectly put together even at this early hour. When we finally descended to the living room, the sight was breathtaking. The enormous tree was surrounded by mountains of presents, wrapped in coordinating paper with elaborate bows. Emma's eyes went wide as saucers. "Look at all the presents," she whispered, squeezing my hand. My father took his position in his leather armchair, assuming the role of gift distributor. "Let's see what Santa brought everyone," he announced, reaching for the first package. What followed was a display of excess that made me increasingly uncomfortable. Jackson received a new laptop, a drone, and a set of professional-quality sports equipment. Tyler's haul included the latest gaming system, designer clothes, and a tablet. Madison squealed over her new American Girl doll collection, complete with furniture and accessories, along with jewelry that looked far too expensive for an 8-year-old. After each child opened a gift, they would run to my parents for hugs and effusive thanks, with my mother capturing every moment on her phone. Throughout this process, Emma sat patiently on the floor beside me, her eyes darting hopefully to the dwindling pile each time my father reached for another package. Finally, after Natalie and Bradley had opened their own impressive array of gifts, including airline tickets to Bali for a second honeymoon, my father picked up a small, plainly wrapped package. "Ah, and this appears to be for Emma," he said, as if just remembering her existence. Emma hurried forward to accept it, her smile wide with anticipation. "Thank you, Grandpa." The package was small enough to fit in her palm, wrapped in what looked like leftover paper, secured with a single piece of tape. Emma didn't seem to notice or care about its humble appearance as she carefully unwrapped it. Inside was a plastic snow globe, the kind sold at dollar stores. Even from where I sat, I could see that the base was cracked and the liquid inside cloudy. Worst of all, a price sticker was still affixed to the bottom. $3.99. Emma's smile faltered slightly, but she rallied quickly. "Look, Daddy, it's snowing inside, just like outside." She shook it gently, watching the sparse glitter move through the murky water. A heavy silence had fallen over the room. I was about to speak when my father cleared his throat. "Well, you're not the favorite, Emma. The real gifts are for your cousins." I froze, certain I had misheard him. But Emma's trembling lower lip told me I hadn't. My mother chimed in, her voice cold. "Maybe if your father had made better choices, things would be different." Emma's eyes filled with tears. The snow globe shook in her small hands. And then, to my horror, a ripple of laughter moved through the room. Natalie covered her mouth, pretending shock but clearly amused. Bradley didn't bother hiding his smirk. Even the children, Madison, Tyler, and Jackson, were snickering openly. "Look, she's going to cry over a cheap toy," Tyler said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Madison added, "My American Girl dolls each cost more than your dad makes in a week." Bradley put his arm around Natalie, speaking in a stage whisper. "This is why economic literacy is so important. Some children need to learn early that the world isn't fair." Emma's tears spilled over. She looked at me, devastated, then ran from the room, still clutching the broken snow globe. I sat there for a moment, paralyzed by a mixture of shock, rage, and heartbreak. These people, my family by blood, had deliberately humiliated a 6-year-old child on Christmas morning. Not just any child, but my daughter. My beautiful, kind-hearted Emma, whose only crime was being born to a father who chose teaching over wealth. Every muscle in my body tensed as I fought to control my response. Part of me wanted to unleash decades of pent-up anger, to shout and break things and make them feel a fraction of the pain they had so carelessly inflicted on Emma. But that wouldn't help her. She needed me to be her father, not another child having a tantrum. I stood up slowly, my voice deadly calm when I finally spoke. "Excuse me, I need to check on my daughter." No one moved to stop me as I left the room. No one apologized or seemed the least bit concerned about Emma. As I climbed the stairs, I could hear them resuming their gift exchange, as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just shattered a child's heart on Christmas morning. I found Emma curled up on the guest bed, sobbing into the pillow, the broken snow globe clutched in her small hand. My heart splintered at the sight. I sat beside her and gently rubbed her back. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," I whispered. She turned tear-stained eyes toward me. "Why don't they like me, Daddy? What did I do wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong," I assured her, pulling her into my arms. "Not a single thing. But Grandpa said I'm not the favorite, and Grandma said you made bad choices." Her voice quavered. "Madison said their dolls cost more than you make. Are we really poor?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Emma, listen to me. There's something very important I want you to understand. A person's worth has nothing to do with how much money they have or what presents they get." She sniffled against my shoulder. But everyone was laughing at me. And that was wrong of them. Very wrong. I wiped her tears with my thumb. "The truth is, those people downstairs have forgotten what really matters in life." "What matters?" she asked quietly. "Love, kindness, how you treat others. The person you are inside." I stroked her hair. "And you, Emma Rose, are the richest person in this house because you have the biggest heart." She considered this, then held up the cracked snow globe. "This is broken, just like Grandma and Grandpa's hearts must be." The simple wisdom of her statement struck me deeply. I think you might be right about that. In that moment, I made my decision. "How about we pack up our things and go home? We can have our own Christmas there." "But what about all the presents downstairs? Don't we have to say goodbye?" "I think we should say goodbye, yes." I stood up, resolute. "Why don't you wash your face and pack your backpack while I go downstairs for a minute?" She nodded, already looking relieved at the prospect of leaving. I descended the stairs with a strange calm. The gift exchange continued in the living room, with more expensive presents being unwrapped and admired. No one looked up when I entered. I stood in the center of the room and cleared my throat. "Excuse me. Emma and I will be leaving now." My mother looked up, annoyed at the interruption. "Don't be ridiculous. It's Christmas Day. Where would you even go?" "Home," I said simply. "To where we're valued and respected." "You're overreacting, as usual," my father said dismissively. "The child needs to toughen up if she's going to survive in the real world." "She's 6 years old," I replied, my voice remaining steady despite the anger coursing through me. "And the real world she lives in is one where people treat each other with basic human decency." Natalie rolled her eyes. Here comes one of Elmer's self-righteous speeches. "Some things never change." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and for the first time saw the emptiness behind her perfect facade. "You're right, Natalie. Some things don't change, but people can, if they choose to." I turned to address the entire room. I've spent my entire life trying to earn approval from people who were never going to give it. I accepted your conditional love, your constant criticism, your belittlement of my choices. But I will not stand by while you treat my daughter that way. Bradley snorted. "A bit dramatic for a simple joke, don't you think?" "A joke?" I repeated incredulously. "You think deliberately hurting a child on Christmas morning is a joke? What kind of people have you all become?" The room fell silent. You look at me and see failure, because I chose to teach rather than chase wealth. You see my modest income and small apartment as proof that I made the wrong choices. But let me tell you what I see when I look at all of you. I gestured around the opulent room. I see people so obsessed with status and money that they've forgotten how to love. I see children being taught that a person's value is tied to their possessions. I see a family that has everything and nothing at the same time. My mother's face had gone pale. "That's quite enough, Elmer." "No, Mother, it's not nearly enough. Do you want to know what I've been doing with the little money I managed to save each month? I've been building Emma's college fund. Even when times were tight, I put away what I could because I want her to have opportunities. Not because I expect her to follow a prescribed path, but because I want her to have the freedom to follow her heart." I took the broken snow globe from my pocket where I'd slipped it before coming downstairs. This cheap, broken toy isn't just an insult to Emma. It's a reflection of what's broken in this family. I placed it carefully on the mantel. You'll need this more than we do. It might remind you of what you've thrown away today." My father stood up, his face flushed with anger or perhaps embarrassment. "Now see here, Elmer. There's no need to make a scene. We can discuss this like adults." "No, Dad. There's nothing to discuss. Emma and I are leaving, and we won't be coming back. Be reasonable." He lowered his voice, stepping closer. "What will people say if you storm out on Christmas? Think of the family reputation." I laughed without humor. "That's always been your primary concern, hasn't it? Not the actual well-being of your family, just how we appear to others." He glanced around nervously, then reached for his wallet. "Look, if this is about money, I can write you a check right now. Something to help with your situation. In exchange, we can put this unpleasantness behind us." I stared at him in disbelief. "You think you can buy my silence? Pay me to pretend you didn't just break my daughter's heart?" "Don't be naive," he hissed. "Everything has a price." "Not everything, Dad. Not everyone." I stepped back. "Emma and I can't be bought." Natalie had been watching this exchange with growing discomfort. For the first time, I saw a crack in her perfect veneer. "Elmer, maybe you should stay. The children can play together this afternoon. We can all start fresh." "Start fresh? After you all laughed at my daughter? After your children mocked her for not having expensive toys?" I shook my head. "No, Natalie. This isn't something we just move past with a game of Monopoly." My mother tried one last approach. "Think of Emma. She'll miss out on Christmas dinner, and there might be other gifts for her we haven't gotten to yet." "Emma is precisely who I am thinking of," I replied, "and she deserves better than conditional love based on financial status. We both do." I turned to leave, then stopped for one final thought. "You know, the irony is that despite having very little money right now, I feel sorry for all of you. Because Emma and I might not have much, but we have what actually matters, and I'm not sure any of you can say the same." I walked out of the room and up the stairs to find Emma waiting with her packed backpack, looking both nervous and relieved. "Are we really going home, Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart, we're going home." As we descended the stairs with our luggage, the entire house had gone quiet. Natalie stood in the foyer, arms crossed protectively over her chest. "You don't have to do this, Elmer," she said quietly. "Yes, I do. For both of us." I took Emma's hand and walked past my sister without another word. No one followed us outside. No one called after us or tried to make amends. The grand house stood silent and cold behind us as I loaded our bags into the car and helped Emma into her booster seat. As we drove down the long driveway, Emma pressed her face against the window, watching the mansion recede in the distance. "Daddy, are we still going to have Christmas?" "Absolutely," I promised. "Maybe not the kind with lots of presents under a big tree, but the kind that matters most." "With love?" she asked. I reached back to squeeze her knee. "Exactly, with love." The drive home was quieter than our journey out. Emma asked difficult questions that deserved honest answers. "Are Grandma and Grandpa bad people, Daddy?" I considered this carefully. "I don't think they're bad people, sweetie. I think they've forgotten what's really important. They care too much about money and what other people think, and that's made them forget how to be kind. Will we ever see them again?" "I don't know," I admitted. "That would be their choice, and they would need to make some big changes in how they treat us." By the time we pulled into the parking lot of our apartment complex, it was late afternoon on Christmas Day. The holiday lights twinkled from windows around us, but I couldn't help feeling I'd failed Emma somehow. Her first real Christmas with extended family had been a disaster, and now we were returning to an apartment with only the few modest gifts I'd hidden in my closet. "Home sweet home," I said, trying to sound cheerful as I unlocked our door. We stepped inside, and I froze. Our small living room had been transformed. A Christmas tree that hadn't been there when we left stood in the corner, decorated with colorful ornaments and twinkling lights. Beneath it sat a pile of wrapped presents. Garland hung from the bookshelves, and stockings had been attached to the entertainment center. "Santa came here too," Emma gasped, running to the tree. Confused, I noticed a note propped against a plate of cookies on our dining table. It was from Linda, my colleague from school. "Elmer, when you mentioned you'd be away for Christmas, a few of us got together and thought your return home should be special. The faculty, parents, and even some students contributed. Consider it our way of saying how valued you are in our community. Merry Christmas to you and Emma. Linda. P.S. "There's dinner in the fridge, just heat it up." I stood in shocked silence, taking it all in. While my biological family had rejected us, our chosen family, the community we'd built around us, had stepped up in the most extraordinary way. "Daddy, can I open these?" Emma was already examining the tags on the packages. "Of course you can, sweetheart. It's still Christmas Day." The next hour was filled with joyful unwrapping. Emma received books, art supplies, board games, and even a beautiful doll with several outfits. There were practical gifts, too. New winter boots, a backpack for the coming school semester, and warm clothes. For me, there were gift cards to local restaurants, a new winter coat, and a basket of gourmet coffee. The doorbell rang, surprising us both. I opened it to find several neighbors from our building, arms loaded with food and small gifts. "We heard you might be coming back early from your family visit," said Mrs. Rodriguez from across the hall. "No one should be alone on Christmas Day." What had started as the worst Christmas of our lives transformed into an impromptu gathering filled with laughter, shared food, and genuine warmth. Emma proudly showed her new toys to the other children from our building, and I found myself surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I owned or earned. As our neighbors departed that evening, Emma sat amidst her gifts with a contentment I hadn't seen all weekend. "This was the best Christmas ever, Daddy." I sat beside her on the floor. "Even after what happened at Grandma and Grandpa's house?" She nodded thoughtfully. "That was sad, but look at all the people who love us here. And they love us just because of us, not because of stuff." Her simple wisdom struck me once again. Out of the painful experience had come an important lesson about what constitutes real family. The phone rang around 9 that evening. It was Natalie. I hesitated before answering. "Elmer? Are you home safely?" Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow. "We are," I replied neutrally. I wanted to apologize. What happened today was horrible. The way Emma was treated. She trailed off. "Yes, it was," I agreed, not making it easy for her. "I didn't stop it. I even participated," she admitted. "I don't know why. It's like when I'm around Mom and Dad, I become this person I don't even recognize." I understood that all too well. "Natalie, I appreciate the call, but an apology needs to come with changed behavior to mean anything." "I know," she sighed. "Things are tense here after you left. Bradley and I had a huge fight. He thinks I should get over it because that's just how things are in this family. But I keep seeing Emma's face when Dad said those awful things." "She's resilient," I said. "She'll be okay because she knows she's loved unconditionally." "My kids don't know that," Natalie said quietly. "They only know they're valued when they achieve or when they have the right things." The admission surprised me. "That can change, Nat. You're their mother." "Maybe," she said, sounding uncertain. "Anyway, I just wanted to check that you got home okay and to say I'm sorry, for today and for a lot of things over the years." After we hung up, I sat thinking about cycles of behavior and how hard they are to break. I wasn't sure if Natalie's apology would lead to real change, but it was something. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into job applications. The curriculum development position I'd mentioned to Bradley was real, but it was located in Columbus, Ohio, over 500 miles away from our current home. Initially, I dismissed it as too disruptive for Emma, but now I found myself reconsidering. A fresh start, away from the shadow of my parents' disapproval, might be exactly what we needed. When I broached the subject with Emma, her response surprised me. Would we live in a new apartment? Would I go to a new school? "Yes to both," I confirmed. "It would be a big change." She thought about it seriously. "Would the mean people be able to find us there?" It took me a moment to realize she meant my parents. "No, sweetie, not unless we wanted them to." "And would we still have friends like Mrs. Rodriguez and Mr. Lee and Linda from your school?" "We'd make new friends," I promised. "It might take a little time, but we'd build a new community there." Emma nodded decisively. "I think we should go, Daddy. I think we should have a new adventure." I submitted my application that evening, and within a week, I was offered a video interview. By mid-January, I had the job, Curriculum Development Specialist for a progressive charter school network, with a salary that was actually higher than my previous teaching position. As we packed up our apartment in February, preparing for the move, an unexpected letter arrived with my parents' return address. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. Inside was a note from my mother, her elegant handwriting instantly recognizable. "Elmer, I understand you're moving to Ohio. While I can't say I approve of uprooting Emma like this, I do acknowledge that what happened at Christmas was unacceptable. Your father refuses to discuss it, but I find I cannot stop thinking about it. Perhaps there are conversations we should have had years ago. If you're amenable, I would like to visit sometime after you're settled. Eleanor." No apology. Not really. Just the barest acknowledgement that something had gone wrong, coupled with another criticism of my parenting choices. It was so typical that I had to laugh. I showed the letter to Emma that evening. "What do you think, sweetheart? Should we let Grandma visit us in our new home someday?" She considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important decisions. "Maybe. But only if she promises to be nice. And no broken presents." "That seems fair," I agreed, placing the letter aside to consider later. A week before we left town, Natalie called again. Her voice sounded different, stronger somehow. "Bradley and I are separating," she announced without preamble. After what happened at Christmas, I couldn't stop thinking about the kind of example we were setting for the kids. Then I found out he's been having an affair with his assistant for over a year. "I'm sorry, Nat," I said, and meant it. "Don't be. It's actually clarifying. I've been living someone else's idea of a perfect life for so long, I'd forgotten what I actually want." She paused. "Mom told me you're moving to Ohio." "That's right. We leave next week." "I think it's brave," she said. "Making a clean break, starting fresh. I might do something similar eventually." 2 days before our departure, the most unexpected contact came in the form of a letter addressed to Emma. The return address belonged to Rebecca, Emma's mother, who had been completely absent from her life for 4 years. I debated whether to give it to her, finally deciding that hiding it would be making choices for Emma in the same way my parents had tried to make choices for me. I explained who it was from, and let her decide. "I want to read it," she said, her small face serious. The letter was simple and age-appropriate. Rebecca explained that she had been dealing with her own problems when she left, but had recently gotten help and was doing better. She didn't ask to see Emma or make promises about returning, just said she was thinking about her and hoped she was happy. "Do you want to write back?" I asked after Emma had read it twice. She shook her head. "Not now. Maybe someday." I was struck again by her emotional wisdom. At 6 years old, she seemed to understand boundaries and self-protection better than most adults I knew. Our last night in the apartment, surrounded by boxes and empty walls, Emma crawled into my bed around midnight. "Daddy, I'm scared about our new adventure but excited too. Is that okay?" I pulled her close. "That's more than okay. That's exactly how big changes should feel. I'm glad the mean Christmas happened," she said sleepily. "You are?" "Why? Because it helped us be brave enough to go somewhere new. And it showed us who our real family is." I kissed the top of her head. "You're pretty smart, you know that?" "I know," she mumbled, already drifting off. "I get it from my dad." 6 months after that devastating Christmas morning, our lives had transformed in ways I never could have predicted. Our apartment in Columbus was slightly larger than our previous one, with a small balcony where Emma had started a container garden. My position as curriculum development specialist was challenging but rewarding, allowing me to impact education on a broader scale while maintaining hours that worked well for single parenthood. Emma had adjusted to her new school with remarkable resilience, quickly making friends and earning her teachers' praise for her creativity and empathy. The initial anxiety about being the new kid had faded, replaced by enthusiasm for learning and growing social confidence. "Daddy, can Lily come over for a playdate on Saturday?" she asked one afternoon in July, referring to her best friend from class. "Of course," I replied, marveling at how quickly she had established meaningful connections in our new community. We had settled into new routines and traditions. Sunday morning pancakes, Wednesday evening walks to the ice cream shop, movie nights with homemade popcorn, small pleasures that cost little but meant everything. The letter from my mother remained in my desk drawer, unanswered for months, until I finally sent a brief, neutral response, providing our address but making no promises about visits. Eleanor had written back suggesting she might come in the fall, when the weather is more agreeable. I neither encouraged nor discouraged the idea, choosing instead to leave that bridge uncrossed until necessary. Natalie's situation had evolved dramatically. Her separation from Bradley had turned into divorce proceedings after more infidelities came to light. She had moved with her children to a smaller house and, in a surprising turn, had enrolled in graduate courses to pursue a teaching certificate of her own. "I've been volunteering at the kids' school," she told me during one of our now regular phone calls. "It turns out I really love working with children, not just my own." "Who would have thought?" "Dad must be thrilled," I commented wryly. "He's not speaking to me," she confirmed. "Cut me off financially when I refused to work things out with Bradley. Mom sneaks me calls when he's golfing. How are you managing?" "It's actually liberating," she admitted. "I'm making choices based on what feels right rather than what looks right." The kids are struggling a bit with the changes, but they're more resilient than I gave them credit for. Madison asked about Emma the other day, wanted to know if she could write her a letter. "I think Emma would like that," I said, surprised but pleased at the possibility of healing even that relationship. The most unexpected development came in early August, when I received an email from Rebecca, Emma's mother. She was living in Portland now, working as a graphic designer, and according to her message, finally addressing the issues that made me run from responsibility. She asked if she could establish some form of contact with Emma, letters or occasional video calls, nothing disruptive, but a way to begin rebuilding some kind of relationship. I discussed it with Emma first, of course. "How would you feel about talking to your mom sometimes? Maybe video calls every few weeks?" Emma considered this carefully. "Would she live with us again?" "No, sweetheart. She lives in Portland, which is very far away. This would just be calls to get to know each other a little." "Would she try to take me away from you?" My heart broke at the fear behind that question. "Absolutely not. You and I are a team. That won't change." Emma nodded slowly. "Then I think it would be okay to talk to her sometimes." I established clear boundaries with Rebecca. Scheduled calls only. No unannounced visits. No promises to Emma that might not be kept. She accepted these terms with a maturity that suggested her claims of personal growth might be genuine. Their first video call was awkward but civil. Emma was shy at first, answering Rebecca's questions with one-word responses until the conversation turned to art, a passion they apparently shared. By the end of the 30-minute call, Emma was enthusiastically showing Rebecca her latest drawings, and a tentative bridge had begun to form. "She seems nice," Emma said afterward, "but not really like my mom. More like just a lady who knows me." "That makes sense," I assured her. "You were very little when she left. It will take time to build a relationship, if that's what you both want." As the months passed and summer turned to fall, I reflected often on the journey that had brought us here. The painful Christmas that had seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning, the catalyst for changes that improved our lives immeasurably. I found myself thinking about the broken snow globe, that $4 token of rejection that had inadvertently set us free. I wondered if it still sat on my parents' mantle, a reminder of what they had lost through their own coldness and materialism. When Thanksgiving approached, we received invitations from several quarters. My mother suggested we might consider returning to Connecticut. Natalie offered her new, more modest home as neutral territory for a family gathering. My colleagues invited us to a community Thanksgiving potluck. Emma and I chose none of these options. Instead, we volunteered at a local community center, serving meals to those in need, spending our holiday giving back rather than dwelling on past hurts or complicated family dynamics. "This is way better than regular Thanksgiving," Emma declared as she carefully carried plates to elderly guests. "We're helping people and making new friends." By the time Christmas season rolled around again, the trauma of the previous year had faded into perspective. We decorated our apartment with homemade ornaments and a small but cheerful tree. Emma insisted on making gifts for everyone important in our lives: drawings, painted rocks, and bookmarks she crafted with meticulous care. On Christmas Eve, as we hung stockings on our bookshelf, Emma presented me with a package wrapped in newspaper she had decorated herself. "You can't open it until tomorrow," she insisted, but I made it all by myself in art class. Christmas morning revealed her creation: a small, handmade snow globe constructed from a jar, glitter, water, and a tiny figure she had molded from clay. A note attached read, "To the best dad ever. Our snow is better, because it's made with love." I held her close, overcome with emotion at her thoughtfulness and the profound wisdom contained in her simple gift. "You're right, Em. Everything is better when it's made with love." Later that day, as we built a snowman in the park near our apartment, I reflected on everything the past year had taught us. The painful rejection by my biological family had freed us to create something more meaningful, a life built on authentic connections, simple joys, and unconditional love. The broken $4 snow globe had taught us the most valuable lesson of all. Sometimes you have to break free from toxic patterns to build something beautiful and new. Today, Emma and I didn't have everything, but we had what mattered most: each other and a circle of people who loved us for who we were, not what we had or what we could give them. That, I realized, was the true meaning of family and the real wealth I wanted Emma to inherit. The understanding that her worth was inherent, not earned through achievements or possessions. That love should be given freely, not wielded as a tool for control or manipulation. That true happiness comes not from what you own, but from who you choose to become and how you choose to treat others. As Emma rolled a perfect snowball for our snowman's head, her laughter echoing across the park, I knew with absolute certainty that we were exactly where we were meant to be. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect yourself or someone you love from toxic family dynamics? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more authentic stories about overcoming life's challenges. Remember that sometimes the most painful moments can become turning points that lead to beautiful new beginnings. Thank you for listening, and may your holidays always be filled with genuine love and acceptance.